Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the 7:30 report. Lockdown's live. I've got a really good friend of mine on tonight, Luke Muller. I already know, oh here we go, this is the health inspector's back. It's going to be, I'm pretty sure, a pretty fun one. I think we'll both stir each other up and we'll get some good stories tonight. So I'm just going to invite Luke in. So, all right, I'm just going to tap him in here. So Luke works up in Queensland at True Love Tattoo, but he's got a real cool story. So we'll wait for him to connect to the spaceship, and then see if we can go intergalactic. So, hi everyone, can see a few familiar faces waving. Thanks for coming in. Hi, thanks for Tisha. Got your first tattoo at Little Tokyo in September. Hi, everyone. So I can see Luke's just joined. He's probably not far off.
Do it again.
I'm just going to do it again because he's on his iPad. So there might be some technical difficulties connecting to Houston. Oh, says send request. And we will see. Oh, hey Joe, how are you, buddy? Gutted we're not at the didn't make it to the Wellington Convention this year. Luke
is unable.
Oh, Luke's unable to join. This might be Hi Tattoo Connect. Pado 8, yes, we're closed for the foreseeable future. Hey Luke, if you're listening, you might have to do it on your phone. We'll try again and invite you via, had some technical issues the other night with iPads.
It should work.
Here we go. I'm going to send a request. Obviously, all the Google bots, they can't track you on your iPad as easily as on your iPhone. So he should be here, and I've even worn this t-shirt tonight. This is a hint for where Luke started. You can get this stylish merch from Voodoo Gosford, Voodoo Tattoo up on the Central Coast, which is one of the beginnings of Luke's story. So, hi, the waves. Thanks for joining in tonight on what's becoming a bit of a regular thing.
What's that say?
A question mark here. Oh, hey, mate from Scotland, Brumby Tattoo. I'm going to try and intro you again. You like my little tunes? All right. I wonder if Luke's stressing at the moment.
This is unable to join.
Luke, come on. I thought you were like up with the latest like technical stuff. I'm even drinking a cup of tea. All right, what we might do, if we don't get him on in a minute, everyone, I'm going to cancel it, and I'll call him on the landline or the bat phone, and then see if we can get him back on. So here we go. We'll try this one. Hi, Deans. Yeah. Oh, mate.
G'day.
Mate, better late than never.
Yeah, I was trying. It was like, invite. I've never done this shit.
Mate, well, you know, you adapted and overcame as usual. So, no, thanks for joining us tonight, mate. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man.
Yep. Can you just give people a little bit of a quick info, like where you're based? You're up in Queensland?
Yeah, I've been up at True Love Tattoo for 13 years now.
Yeah, wow.
Moved up here that long ago. Worked for one of my best mates, Mez.
Yeah.
Really good bunch of guys, man. We've finally, after all these years, got a really great crew of 7 guys who all get along, and yeah, it's a non-stop laugh. It's such a great atmosphere, and people just love coming out of the little shop, and it's a proper old like tattoo parlor. You can walk in, you can see everybody working, you can talk to everybody. It's a fishbowl. Like you can just see it from the street. People know I've been there. I'm tattooing kids who went to the primary school across the road. You know,
wow.
It's sort of an institution in the area now. So,
crazy.
It's a great time, man.
Or I see Sam the tattoo man. Sam the tattoo man just said, "God looks handsome." Well,
Hey.
so with that 13 years, how long have you actually been tattooing for?
18 years. I think it's
18,
about 18
cool.
years now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sort of moved up here in 2008, I think it was. Yeah, something
Yep.
like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go back to the beginning. Like I know this little story. Like I believe your dad got tattooed by Alex Chater back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, you know, like when I was first starting tattooing, even before that, like tattoos to me, it was, I think I came in a different way. My dad had tattoos, but it didn't really influence me to get tattooed. It was only when I became a tattooist and realized who had tattooed him, where they were done, that I thought it was really cool. And
Yeah.
it's funny, yeah. It's like, because I came from the 90s from skateboarding and bodyboarding and surfing. And a lot of my favorite skaters had tattoos. Friends who were skateboarders had tattoos. You know, tattoos like Sheldon as well. Like Sheldon Kennedy, he was a skateboarder in my town with me, and he got an apprenticeship. I remember that. And you know, that it sort of went from there. And nowadays, I appreciate my dad's tattoos. So like Alex Chater did like a really cool side profile girl face on his arm back in the 50s before he went to war in Malaya. And then he got tattooed in Singapore as well. Like he got a really cool Mickey Mouse, which is a pretty amazing. Yeah, he can't remember any of them. Like he was so drunk.
Well, that was part of the rite of passage, wasn't it?
Yeah. My dad said like he said the stories of like Alex Chater's shop was amazing. Like he said that when he went there, he went with a mate, and they were pretty drunk. But you walked in the shop and you lined up around the room up to next to the tattooist. And then Alex would let's say to the glass guy in the room, like, you have to watch the front door. You let anybody in, they get in front of you. So you'd stand there with your foot against the front door. They'd go, no, you can't come in. So then you see those photos of Alex tattooing, and there's all the guys standing around behind him. That was the queue waiting to get tattooed.
So, amazing. Well, if only these days we had to like stop people coming into the shop to get tattooed.
Okay, yeah, exactly. And my
would
dad
be
said
a nice luxury.
It was such a mix of people. It wasn't what you thought back then. It was, a lot of military people. There was a lot of theatre actors, he said, and a lot of just sort of King's Cross locals. He wasn't in King's Cross. It was at Paddington shop he got tattooed. But then he went to Singapore on R&R from like fighting in Malaysia, and you got given like a map of Singapore, and there was areas blacked out, and you were told, don't go in those areas. You're not allowed in those areas. So my dad said he got off the plane, or the boat, I can't remember what it was, and he jumped off and was like, showed the taxi driver, take me there. And he went straight there and went to raffles, did all that stuff in Singapore, got really drunk, and then got a tattoo from there. And he can't even remember who it was, you know, like it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's just
amazing,
cool.
Wild stuff. Wild stuff. Yeah, like the proper rite of passage. We've got a couple of comments. We've got Rhys gone, love, true love, best shop with the best artists. Love your work, Luke. Then M44, love your stuff, Luke. And then Damo, I used to work with years ago up at Skin Effects, has said hello. So
rad. Awesome.
With all of that, sorry for jumping ahead, mate. I'm just excited. So with all of that, like, here's a hint. Like, this is a new Voodoo t-shirt. Like, I know you started off on the Central Coast. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started. I was graphic designer, a graphic pre-press, and it was becoming like it was dying out, the industry. And I worked with a guy who lived on the Central Coast, and he'd said to me, you know, like, because I was already doing like some punk flyers and some designs for friends, and you know, the odd thing here and there, and I was doing a lot of stuff on the computer back then. You know, like that's how I'd learned to draw and stuff, like basically later on. And so I basically went up, met Davo, and Davo was like, he wasn't really looking for anybody, but he said I could come and hang out on the weekends. So I used to work Monday to Friday in Sydney, then I lived in Bondi. I'd drive up there on Saturday morning, and I'd clean the shop, and I'd hang out, and I'd talk to people. You know, I'd do some drawing, like back then it was, you know, flash tattooing. So it was like re-stenciling Cherry Creek flash, like just everything. Back then, you know, everybody had like Paul Jeffries flash. I love Japanese stuff. So you're retracing all of that, and not many shops had like, you know, traditional stuff. So you had to hunt that out, you know, there. Like it was lucky enough, I think, when I did my first sort of orders, when I was looking through the catalogs, that Johnny Entwistle had the Sailor Jerry books. So I ordered the 2 that you could get back then from him, and I was sort of always wanting to do stuff out of that, you know. I couldn't get anybody to get it. You'd get
Yep.
maybe your friends would get it because they understood it. They were
Yep.
probably, a lot of my friends were getting tattooed by like people like Geordie Cole and
Yep.
other guys from Melbourne and around Sydney. But it wasn't really a big thing to get traditional because it was sort of the end of that era of getting fine line or the opposite, getting like color bomb new school stuff. So,
Yep.
like Tonster Flash was huge, like that stuff
Yeah.
was huge. So, I mean, there's a lot of that. And I think it helped me learn to tattoo. And that's where I started. I kind of was just tracing and drawing. And then eventually, probably 3 or 4 months in, Davo realized he couldn't live without me because I pretty much cleaned
Yep.
his shop from top to bottom. And I knew where everything was. So it was a proper apprenticeship, like going eventually he sort of offered me the job and I had to quit my job and move to the Central Coast. And I was so lucky that my wife at the time, well, she was my girlfriend at the time, she was happy to support me while I learnt to tattoo because I wasn't getting paid anything. So
Yep.
we lived in a little house and I went to work every day and I got there at 8:30. I made needles, I cleaned tubes, I mopped the floor, I talked to customers, and for what I was doing before that, I was a graphic designer, so I was living in an office. So I would talk to customers and stuff every now and then, but a lot of it was just sitting with my headphones on behind a computer. So I had to kind of learn how to be around people again, and that was one of my biggest challenges, I think, when I first started. But I was lucky enough that one of the guys I work with let me tattoo him one night after only being there like a month, and it was a kanji symbol, and it was on his thigh, and it was. Well, actually, Davo didn't even know what happened. It was just to see whether I could be like doing this job, like tattooing someone, having them right in front of me, talking to them, being in space. And I was fine. And I was like, okay, I can do this. So I went from there and just I was lucky to learn, I think, in the last of that kind of original apprenticeship sort of style of thing, like you had to be in a shop to get a tattoo machine. You had to, you couldn't just like, there was no catalogs. If you were calling people, you're calling like the Bowens and you were getting like a PO box number, you were getting a COD in. They were calling the shop to make sure you're a tattooist. They were talking to your teacher. Johnny Whistle, I remember him, like when I called up, he has like a book where he writes in where you started, where you worked, and you'd have all your details. So he's got this amazing catalog of where everybody started and where they learned, and just so he knew that he was selling to a professional. But after that, I mean, of course, it got better and better over the years. But I remember like when I first started, I had I got my first tattoo machine from Mickey Sharp's, and Mark came to the shop, and I just got my last tax check. It was my last $400 to my name, and I talked him to selling me at least one tube and one linograph machine for $400.
Wow.
So the next 6 months, I did tattoos with that one machine. Color, line work, shading, the whole lot. And it was, I think it taught me a lot. Like a machine builder would say, hey, what do you use? It's like, I don't know, does it go up and down? Does it go in and out? I'll tattoo with it. I think that helped me with that skill. And Davo did the best thing ever. Like the old, and people have heard about it, but like he got a bag of parts, the machine, pulled it apart, put it in the bag, and went, there you go, put it together. Tattoo. So I put that together and I tattooed with it. It was a Brett Stewart aluminium frame machine, which I still got.
He used to have the side plates, and you could customize them.
Oh no, mine had 3 skulls down the sides. It was pretty rad.
He was big on the skulls in that era.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was funny because like then after that, I had a good friend of mine. You remember Wally that used to work with Baldrick and those guys?
I know the
name. Back in Ireland now. Yeah, well, Wally was, we were at a wedding just after I started, and he's like, have you got machines? I'm like, oh, not really, I've got this one linograph, and he's like, okay, cool. And he kind of didn't say anything about it, and then about a week later, Rolf Kaufman turns up to the shop. And I'm like, hey, man, and I already knew Carl. I'd known Carl for a few years already. Me and him had been, used to see him at the pub at the Duke of Edinburgh in Newtown all the time, and we'd party and drink, and I knew he was an amazing tattooist. He was tattooing my friends. Maddie, my wife, was getting tattooed by Bradlon at that stage, and guys like Bradlon, like skateboarders were getting tattooed by Bradlon. That's where I first saw custom tattooing, and 100%. And that was sort of like guys like good friend of mine, Christian O'Sullivan. He had like this logo on his leg, and I remember just being obsessed with it. And that was like the first tattoo I ever got was after a competition where all the skate comp were all at in Port Macquarie, and back in those days, we were trying to get the funds to make the skate parks in Port Macquarie. So I'd drive up on the weekends and we'd put on competitions and and try and gain money so we could put a good skate park in Port Macquarie. And that's where I met Christian. And we drove all the way back to Sydney talking tattoos. And that was the first time I'd seen anything that wasn't a fine line biker thing or a Ned Kelly or a Wizard or a Skull. It was something very different. And it was Bradlon's graffiti style about it and stuff. It was amazing. So that's where I started getting a real interest in looking at Australian tattooing and what was out there. And I learned about people like Andrew McLeod and Jane Laver and Kate Knowles down in Melbourne. I knew that was just the thing that was happening. Knew that like at that stage, a little bit later than that, I knew that like guys like Dean and Dan had Sacred in New Zealand and stuff, and Rose was there at that stage, and that was when Adam Craft. And there's a whole bunch of people that I was getting into around that sort of era. And from there, I got my first tattoo, and one of those comps we had, I was in the comp, and I went to hit this wall ride, and I landed on my face basically, and it made a massive slap in this big car park. My mate ran over with a $50 voucher and stuffed it in my shorts. Went, "You won the best slam of the day. There's a $50 voucher." So I went and got a tattoo. So that was
amazing.
Brett Barrington's shop, Wildfire.
Yep, Wildfire. Yep.
Yeah.
Who taught Sheldo?
Sure it was Mick Waters who did the tattoo as an apprentice, but I can't remember.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was, and it was funny because after talking about Bradlon, I found out he was coming up to Port Macquarie and working with Brett in the holidays when it was busy, but I never got tattooed because I was back in Sydney by then. So it took me a while. I got a little tattoo. I've literally got like my initials on my ankle in Old English. Like it's just, and I remember I didn't even know what Old English was at that stage. So I call it the sublime writing. Can I have it in the sublime writing?
Take a seat, young man.
yeah. Oh, he squeezed an extra $25 out of me. He's like, oh, no. Oh, no, it was an extra $10. So I was like, no, it's $30 a letter. So you have to give me another $10. So
And where was that on your body? On your ankle, did you say?
On my ankle. It's been covered. Davo covered it with a big piece he did when I first started, which was drawn by Gilesy, who was a guy that I lived with for a long time as a punk artist in Sydney. Okay. He did things like the original toe-to-toe logo. Oh, he did tons of stuff. Like the sort of 90s, if it had a cool cartoon in the poster of it, it was punk. It was probably Gilesy. You know, he had a lot of stuff. He taught. I got to watch him draw a lot when I lived with him. So and I got to watch him draw tattoo designs that he would then take to Josh, and Josh would tattoo our friends and stuff. And Gilesy was always destined to be a tattooist, but never became a tattooist. So I tried to get him into it, tried to bring it into the voodoo at one stage, and he kind of just didn't pick it up. It was too instant for him, whereas I think his art, it's built up. You know, it's a lot different style. But yeah, man, that helped me get along, was like living with Gilesy and being in part of the punk scene in Sydney. And, you know, I was helping out with making flyers and stuff for him back then. And man, it was a good time.
Like, you know, heavily influenced by the skateboard scene, the music scene, the punk scene, and, you know, your own great, it sounds like you were probably destined to be a tattooer as well. It's funny. It's funny because I think destined, I don't think I was like I never fell into it. It was something there. I think it was just going that way. Eventually, I was going to hit tattooing. I think, and I'm glad I did. You know, like it was scary when I first started that first 3 months. Oh man! But to do all of that, to drive from Bondi to the Central Coast, all that sort of stuff shows like massive commitment. Yeah. And you know, we're from a similar era, and back then doors didn't open like they do now. Like, you know, especially after. Man, like I don't know about
you took it.
Yeah. I don't know about up your way, but after we came out of the last lockdown, within the first month, it was almost like every second shop was, you know, putting out a flyer to get an apprentice. You know, so it was a lot easier just to get that contact. Like, you know, you had to know somebody or make a big sacrifice to do it. I'm just going to say hi to a few people here. Dwayne Cash has said hi, boys. We'll have to get Dwayne on here one night.
Oh, yes, you do. He's got the best stories.
Yeah. Then we've got Dean Reardon checks in, and then Mr. Dingo, 2259U. And then Joe Kinser's gone, hey, fellas, Cherry Creek Flash paid the bills. It did.
I've got a great one about Cherry Creek Flash, man. I finished my apprenticeship. I went to Europe, and I went to Denmark, and I went to Henning's shop. And I went up to Royal and to meet Henning, a friend of mine, Maria's, Judd's wife, was working there at the time. And he was like going to have a look at my portfolio, but he's saying, "Oh, look, you're going to be in London for the 2007 convention. Just bring your portfolio to that." I'm like, "Yeah, cool, rightio." So there I am with walking around the London convention with like the heavyweights of tattooing in the world. And I walk over to Henning. He's like, "Oh, Henning, Luke, come over here." And he's like, "You bring the portfolio?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he sits down, and then on one side, Scott Sylvia sits down. On the other side, Chris O'Donnell sits down.
Oh.
And they all go through my flash portfolio of Cherry Creek. And they had the best time. They were like, we would us all the time. And they bring us all their custom garbage they've been working on that they haven't learned anything. They're like, "You're a street tattooer. You've learned to tattoo." They're like, "Now it's time for you to go on from here and learn custom tattooing." You know, like it's really cool. And they were like, it's refreshing back then to see someone who wasn't trying to jump in the deep end of doing custom stuff. So
for sure. Well, all of that stuff was such a good grounding. Like I know myself, whenever I'd try a new needle weight or something, I'd set it up and, you know, have my backup round shader if I was trying to use a mag. And if I couldn't get it going, I'd go back to the safety of the round. It was, like a great learning experience and, you know, getting your chops up and all the rest of it. But like, I know older tattooers, when they would look at your work back then, like the best compliment you could get would be, "Man, that's a clean tattoo."
Yeah.
You know, and that was
exactly,
like, you know, you were on point.
You've
and they were
that
scrutinizing, scrutinizing your line work, your saturation, your shading, all those sorts of things.
And I mean, back then it was still photo albums, you know, like, so we had the camera, the shop, film, you go down to the pharmacy, do all that. You'd end up, oh, don't worry, mine's here somewhere.
Banging out the hits.
Well, Davo made me take photos of the first 100, so I have a folder that's like the first 100.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, look back now, you're like, "Oh, wow, it's embarrassing." At the same time, that's part of what I did.
No way.
Yeah. But at the same time when it started, like tattooing wasn't huge. It was big, but it wasn't huge. You know, it was worldwide. I think in Australia, it was just after that. I started right as like probably about a few months in, Miami Ink started on TV on Fox or something like that. And so people were coming in, "Have you seen this show?" And all of a sudden, it just started building, and people were getting Japanese tattoos, and people were getting, because they were learning about it from the show, and it sort of subliminally got into them. And so everything changed for us really quick. We went from those winters where you'd sit from January, February through to like tax time, just drawing flash or tracing sheets or cleaning stuff or doing renovations to the shop, because you knew it just wasn't busy. And I mean, that was the first step of my tattooing. I thought, "What the fuck have I done? This is not busy." This is not... And
steak in summer, fish and chips in winter.
yeah, exactly, man. Oh yeah. I mean,
hey, just quickly. Sorry, mate. Just quickly, with Cherry Creek, who drew it? I tried to research it the other day because a lot of it looks very similar to Gary Davis or Celestial Arts.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. It's not. It wouldn't even like. I was told it was like it's from somewhere in the middle of the US, and the guy wasn't maybe a tattooist either. And then there was some theories that went out in the sort of early times I was tattooing that robots drew it. So like, I was like, no.
Or maybe it was the kid from the Wonder Years.
Yeah, exactly. There was all these theories about it, but I think it was just like a Midwestern company.
Here we go. Neil Cheatham's just said Randy Rand Johnson.
There we go. Yeah, no, exactly. Yep. Yeah, which is exactly right. Yeah, true. Yep.
I'm just going to say a few more highs. Hey, Andrew. Shay's gone, hey Luke. And then Lupo Arms, Luke. And then, they've got into... So, Fred Savage.
Fred Savage. That's who drew the Cherry Creek Flash.
Yeah. So after all that, you did what? Like, it sounds like you did roughly a solid 5-year stint.
Yeah, it was like
would that be correct?
4 or 5 years. And with the shop we took from being like in the same place, it was originally Dave Moore's shop. So it was modern art tattoo. And then it became a body art shop. Then Davo bought it. And then we moved it around to the main street and took it upstairs. And it was so funny because we turned it into a very much like, it looked like, I'm going to quote the junkie that climbed the stairs the first night that we opened and just walked upstairs and looked around and went, "Looks like some sort of fucking fancy hairdressing salon."
Oh.
It was like, wow.
Man of style.
We had a pool table in that shop, which lasted about 2 or 3 games, where it was shut down because it was just too fucking noisy. But we had we moved to there, and then after that, I basically I'd done my time, and
yeah,
I'd gotten married, and I had all these vouchers from Flight Centre, and my wife and Maddie and I knew we were going to travel,
yep.
and so we packed up and we went to Europe for a month, and that's
Cool.
it was 07, and it started with going to Denmark to see Maria. Judd was back in Australia at that time, but we were going to travel across Europe, visiting tattoo shops and doing, all the galleries and things like that. My wife was right into art history, so it was great that I got lessons all the way across Europe. But we did tattoo stuff in between. Went to Hamburg and went to, Herbert Hoffman's shop. Then went to Amsterdam. I met Rob Admiral and those guys, and met Lena and Yob around that same time. And then went to London. Fingers was already in London, who, back when I was an apprentice, there was Fingers, Dave Altno, BE, and myself were all sort of part of the punk rock art and music scene and stuff. We all apprenticed at the same time. So we kind of stuck together. So that was back when mobile phones and stuff. It wasn't even MySpace, I think, at the start. But we were we'd meet up on Tuesdays at Voodoo. We'd go surfing, or we'd go, Fingers and I would go surfing, and then we'd go and hang out in the shop. We called it Cheeseburger Tuesdays, because we get cheeseburgers from McDonald's and hang out in the shop and talk shit. And that turned into a regular occurrence with everybody involved, Davo, and then everybody who also worked the shop. And it was like a way to exchange to each other what we're doing, and, we'd look at each other's drawings, and, Fingers getting a sleeve off Davo. So it was a lot of us trying to learn from from good artists. So it was a good, jumping point to sort of move on to the rest of the world. So when I went to London after I'd been through Europe, Fingers was in London, and he was working for Henry Haight in London. And we ended up hanging out with Henry Haight and all those guys and going to the London convention, where we just had an absolute ball. It was just it was just kid in a candy store. You'd seen all these guys in Tattoo Life and ITA and all these magazines, and you're just walking around, meeting Philip Liu and Paul Booth and all these people you'd only heard of, and seeing their tattoos and they're all selling art. It was just amazing, man. It really opened my eyes up to what was next, and I came back to Australia after that, and moved over to STR in Wyoming while I was looking for a house in Brisbane. Did some guest spots as well. Even last year at Voodoo, I went up and worked at Westside because I was getting tattooed by Matt Cunnington already. And Judd, one of Judd's and I, we have one of our best friends, Phil. He's the guy that introduced me to those guys. So when I moved up here to Brisbane, Judd had already left Westside, but was working at True Love. But he'd offered me in a way, asked Nez, hey, you should probably give this guy a job. I'm leaving to move to Denmark. And I was lucky enough that Judd gave me a few clients, and basically just moved to Denmark. And we just sort of started at True Love, and that was it. I've just been there ever since. But at the same time, now, because I could travel more, because I was free of my apprenticeship and stuff, I traveled. So every year I went back to Denmark and worked at Judd and Maria's shop, the Sailor's Grave. For a few years, and that was amazing. It was a lot of fun, and you get to know the place when you go somewhere overseas, and you've been over there so many times. You get to know the place. You just have a lot of fun. I meet the same people, hang out with the same people, and tattoo the same people. And I did that for probably 4 years. I think I was going back and forth every other year, And eventually, Judd did one of the best conventions that I've ever done over there, and that was called the Wizard's Den. And
the Wizard what?
The Wizard's Den.
Wow, okay.
So what he'd done is he invited 25 tattooists from around the world to tattoo in a skate park. They were allowed to bring one friend to tattoo with them each. And there was some amazing tattooists at this thing. There was Tony Nilsson and Hansa from Norway, from Blue Arms. There was Jamie Ruth was there, who was a good friend of Judd's, who done some time. It was so much fun.
Skin Wizards, Judd just jumped in.
Skin Wizards, waving our tat ones. But Judd did that, and it was amazing, man. It was I got to meet some really cool people at that, and it was just one day convention in a skate park. Any money that was made over the top of the money made by from the bar and stuff that went to building a skate park in Greenland, I think, and it was just a really cool interaction with like people I would have never met, and like people from over there, like Hans Schroeder and Peter Lager and like Franz Jaeger and like all these really cool guys that I'd never met in Denmark, and friends like Johan and stuff was over there working. So Johan came and worked at it. It was a really good time, man. Like it was a cool event. It's one of the coolest tattoo conventions I've ever been to.
Wow, you've done quite a few like journeys with Judd as well, haven't you? Like ridden across Europe and that sort of stuff.
Well, one of the times I was in Europe, Judd had bought a second motorcycle. I had a 404 Honda here. He bought an extra one. He had a little Harley Sportster, and we rode to like up through the middle of Sweden to Uddevalla to the old-time weekend, and went to the hot rod show there, and then rode back down the sort of coast and camped along the way. Because there's amazing laws in Sweden where you can camp anywhere. As long as you're not on someone's property, you can just camp. Yeah, so just find a nice spot on the river. You're like, oh, we'll just camp here. So we did that. It was amazing, like riding around through there, beautiful roads, you know, like it was a lot of fun. It was I'd do that. I mean, I've done a couple of trips overseas on bikes, but that was a time, especially us just sort of getting back on bikes and like going, we're going to ride across Sweden.
Yeah, man.
It was a lot
I know
of fun.
you rode through New Zealand a couple of years ago with Mayo as well.
Yeah, Mayo and I put the idea to Mayo because there's a tree at the top of the North Island. New Zealanders believe your soul leaves the island from there, and it's one single tree. And I've always wanted to go see it. And of course, Mayo's like, let's do it on motorcycles. And I was like, let's do it on motorcycles. And we were lucky enough at the same time, Matt Jordan had just bought a place right up in the north of New Zealand, a couple of hours away from there. So Mayo and I got off the plane, went straight to the bike hire shop, jumped on these 2 Honda Africa Twins, and rode to the top of the island in one night.
Wow. And
not all the way up, just up to Matt's, then rode the next day up the top. But there, once again, roads over there are amazing. It was amazing fun. And Mayo and I ended up, as a thank you present to Matt, we painted his water tank and didn't tell him and completely kept it a secret from him. So about a month later, he went up to his farm and there's this giant water tank painted with I think I did a panther with like Playboy bunny ears and inside jokes. And it was funny because I was at the convention before it and he didn't know about it. And Matt was like, I just want a tattoo from you. I'm like, I got this tattoo I've always wanted to do. It's a panther with bunny ears. And he got it. He didn't even know he had this tattoo of this painting we did for him. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Mayo was trying to teach me how to be graffiti artist of some sort, or like mural artist, and it was really cool. It was like a nice learning experience, and me and him had an absolute fucking ball, like we always do. But yeah, man, I'd love to do that again. I'm going to live in New Zealand eventually. I'm going to retire there. So
yeah, mate, I've only been there once, and it's such a beautiful place, man. I went to the Wellington convention a couple of years ago, and I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, I can't believe I've not been here before, and I'm in my late 40s. Like, what a loser.
I think I've driven probably, it's got to be over 20,000, 30,000 Ks around New Zealand.
Wow.
Every time I go there, I stay for a good 2 weeks. Fertile and I will go fly fishing, or Ben Raditz and I will go fly fishing if I can catch up with him sometime. So I go over there fly fishing whenever I can. I mean, I haven't been able to go for 18 months, but that's something it's been huge. It's funny because fly fishing is like tattooing. It's like having this machine goes with this and this. Oh, this ink's new and that. It's all. It's got a whole thing like tattooing where I love it. And we go off for a week and we don't talk about much tattooing. It's totally just fly fishing and it's probably one of the most relaxing things I've ever done. And New Zealand being such a beautiful place to do it, I know I'm going to end up there. I've even chosen the place I want to retire to.
Of course you have. So fly fishing is what? You're in the water wading in those overall things?
Yeah, like it's strong, sturdy, like waders and stuff. But like we're doing, say, 20 Ks in a day up a river, 10 Ks up and back. Wow. And, we're trying to go to spots where no one goes. So it's great. You'd be standing out in this river and it's prehistoric there. It's just beautiful. And it's great because there's going to be no snakes going to bite you. There's no spiders. It's just just walk through wherever you want, and I don't know. It's something relaxing about it, and it's something I always look forward to when I go to New Zealand. And everybody in New Zealand knows it. I just love that place, and I love going there. And eventually, I'll get there to live there. But it's not a pipe dream. It's going to happen. So. Yeah,
for sure. So with that, like quite a lot of tattooers fish and fly fish. I know as well. Like. Thank God the fixie phase, like came and went pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because for a moment, every tattooer on the planet had a fixed wheel like push bike.
Yeah.
No, I know
exactly.
you've been quite the style guru over the years. Were you ever on a fixie?
No, never rode a fixie. I rode a BMX at one stage for a bit to work and back. That's about it.
Yeah.
Which used to be fun. We used to ride across the city, get a train right across the Harbour Bridge, going through North Sydney on a BMX. So it used to be a lot of fun.
Oh, mate, yeah.
Finish at like 10, 11 and ride through the city. It was awesome.
Yeah, I used to have, like, when I was a kid, I had there used to be a mongoose and a red line. I had a mongoose, and then I saved up and I bought a secondhand red line off my mate. The layback seat pole, the checker seat, and the crossbar pad, and you'd always knacker yourself on the gooseneck and do your shins on the pedals. It was like, BMX Bandits. I remember it coming out.
Oh man, yeah, those days were awesome. I mean, it's funny. I rode bikes to get to work and back around Sydney because I found it really easy to get. It was a lot quicker to get around Sydney on a bike. But it was always gear bikes, or like eventually as I rode a massive BMX. But it's funny. I mean, nowadays I don't know if you could do how I used to ride and where I used to ride. Like, I mean, I got knocked over a couple of times on Oxford Street down the bottom of Taylor Square, turning around right by taxis would knock you over and stuff. But man, I used to enjoy like that part of Sydney. Like late nights in Sydney, skateboarding was always the best. Like the streets were empty, and you'd meet up with everybody and just go rolling around the city and just cause havoc. It was great fun.
I'm gonna go through my little because we're a bit over the halfway mark now. I'm gonna go through my little points here. So, talk to us about the USA. Like, I know you've been to the States quite a few times.
I've been a few times now, and it was late. It's funny because it was later than I thought I would go to the US because I was going to Europe a lot, and I got invited to a convention in Breckenridge in Colorado, and that was another amazing convention. That was like a convention at 12,000 feet, so it's in the snow. It was the spring break weekend, and it was full of like amazing tattooists. Like Hari Masa came over from Japan, and so did Haruhide came over and like sold prints and stuff. There were like guys like Brian Bruno, all the guys from Denver who are all amazing lifetime guys and stuff. There was like Tim Lehigh was there. So it was like this room full of like people I'd always wanted to meet in tattooing. So, and it sucked because I worked pretty much the whole time, so I didn't end up getting tattooed. But I was in a room with like some of the best people I know in Australian tattooing, like guys like Evan Griffith and Geordie and Tennille and Owen, and we all just had an absolute ball at 12,000 feet. Even though we couldn't fucking breathe for 4 days, it was pretty fucking hectic. And that was actually the first time Fertile and I went fly fishing. We found out that there was fly fishing there, and he and I never fished together. We both fly fishing. We went down to the local shop. We organised a guide. And there's this guy called Boston George, and he took me and Fertile fly fishing. We had to drive through South Park. Like through where the town South Park is. So, and it was great because we got to go down about 4,000 feet so you could breathe again. It was like weight off your chest, and stood in these streams that were like freezing, pretty much ice on top of them. And we fished there and had an absolute ball. But that sort of, from there we went across the US. We sort of went straight over to, we went to San Fran from there because I'd always wanted to go over there. And a friend of mine had been tattooed by Khalil at Tattoo City, and she was really good friends with Trevor. They went to art school together. He used to be Ed's curator. So she kind of said, I'll talk to Trevor and you can probably go and check out the shop, Ed, and stuff like that, and all the artwork and stuff. And I went to San Fran, and all of a sudden I'm hanging out with Trevor and in the shop with Doug, and Trevor's like, come down to the studio. So I'm standing there, in Ed Hardy's painting studio, checking out all these latest paintings, and with a good friend of ours. So, and by the end of it, Trevor and I got on quite well, and I got on with Doug and the guys, and Trevor was like, would you ever, think about coming and doing a guest spot? And I kind of just sort of blew it off. I was like, that'd be kind of rad. And then, and I sort of didn't think much about it. And it wasn't until I was in Europe the next year with Fertile, and I was staying in Vienna with Fertile. And I just happened to I was talking to Trevor, and he said, hey, man, just wanted to ask you again. I've just been talking to Ed. He's had a look through your website. Would you want to come and do a guest spot? And I said it
Wow.
once again. Once again, I was kind of like on traveling. So I was like, yeah, man, sounds great. And then
Yep.
I got on a plane and came back to Australia. And 24 hours later, I messaged Trev back and went, wait a second. No, you've misunderstood me. It would be my fucking honor to come and work.
Yeah. Well,
I talked to Morgan about it, and Morgan's like, you're a fucking idiot. Go and tattoo your wife there. Like, you're going to tattoo an Ed Hardy shop. Just tattoo someone you know. Like, you know, it'd be a great thing. And it was. It literally, that I went back, the next year I went there, and I went by myself, and I spent a month in the US, and I worked there and across the US in a couple of mate shops. But it was, man, the most mind-blowing week of my life. Like, because I walked in there, and Rich Hardy happened to be working there for that week as well. It was sort of the end of his week there. And Rich, and also, Apro was there. Apro Lee was working there. Yeah, which was totally random, because I know Apro from up here when he was working at Westside. So him and I ended up staying at Trevor's place together for the whole time and had a ball, me and him just cruising around town and stuff and working there. And Ed hung out in the shop the whole week. And he never hangs out in the shop anymore. He'll go down there, pick up the letters, or he'll go drop down to his, painting studio. But he hung out, and he just was loving this, that the whole shop was alive with people, and he went through my portfolio. I did a consult with someone with Ed Hardy, which was just amazing. Like watching him.
I got goosebumps, mate.
Yeah, dude, it was pretty amazing sitting there with just me and him in the afternoon. Sun's going down, and we're kind of like, Khalil's gone to buy some drinks or whatever to hang out. And then Ed and I, this girl walks in the shop. She wants to know about having this tattoo fixed. And I watched him, like, nicely talk to her about her tattoo, which wasn't that great. But at the same time, pick all the good points, talk to her about what she could do. And then watched him underhandedly shit talk the shop up the road, but not badly. Just being really professional about it. And kind of walked out. And I didn't think much about it. Then you think, wait a second, this guy hasn't been tattooing 10 years. And he just does a consult, And then that week he brought the dog into the shop, he's hanging out, and he's just chatting away. He's like, what are you tattooing there, Luke? And he show him like a Bob Shaw flash piece you're doing off the wall. And then like, I did like a pin-up girl inside of a firecracker. Like inside of a piece of stick of dynamite. He's like, oh, that's a cracker. And he's like, like having a good laugh with us all and stuff. The guy I was tattooing was like, that's Ed Hardy.
Yes. Man, so mad.
Great time.
So mad. I think, when was the last time I saw you? You stayed here or before?
Yeah,
and then I think I think me and
there.
Salmon had just come back from the States, or was going there, because I went and saw the Ed Hardy exhibition.
Yeah.
And man, it was so cool.
Yeah, dude, it's amazing. Like,
to
see him move over into fine arts, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, mate, so phenomenal, right? Just what he's done. Like, and Salmon goes to me, oh, have you ever met him before? And I went, no, I haven't. She's gone, where's his shop? I go, oh, in San Francisco. She's gone, we're going there. So we drove straight there, but it was closed for that week for some reason.
Oh, wow.
But I got my photo out the front. I'd been past there a few times and been in there and spoken to Doug, but never met Ed. But, what a legend, man. Like, I know, like, Cliff Clayton, Trevor McStay, a guy called Colin Krantz in Melbourne. Colin Krantz had sleeves from Ed Hardy, Lau Hardy. So I've seen a lot of his older work over the years and just heard so many good things about him. Like, to just hear that he's hanging out in the shop and he's still got the love, and, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, like, when Trevor told, he's like, he never does this. I don't know. It must be just there's so many guest artists here and there's so much going on. It's like it's livened the shop back up. So he must be just wanting to hang out. And totally, normally he'll call up and say, I'm coming up. But he was just turning up with his dog in his suit, hanging out with little Cosmo, his dog, who was amazing. And he's like talking to people, just reading his letters out the front of his mail and stuff. And that shop, the walls could talk. Like, when you work there, you work in his booth, and they give you his drawing table to put your stuff on. So you turn around and the reference is all there for you to look at. And you're allowed to look at anything. There's photo albums and stuff.
Wow.
Like, there was one of my favorite photo albums Khalil got out for me, who's the counter guy for Ed. He's been working for Ed since the Van Ness days when he was up the street at Realistic. He pulled out this photo album, and it's just Paul Rogers doing headstands. And Ed said it was saying that Ed used to say that what happened was he'd take Paul to a convention, and if he got bored, he'd just do a headstand. So and this is like at 80 years old. He was several 70s. He's doing headstands, and it's just amazing, man. Like, this whole photo album of just Paul Rogers in about 70 years old doing headstands
At conventions.
at conventions, or just in his house. Like, well, he was a circus guy, so you know he always
Totally.
So, yeah, he's someone I'd love to have met.
Oh, mate, like, yeah, like all the things you see and you hear about Paul Rogers, like, what a gentleman, and, like, you know, gave so much back. So just quickly on Ed, I'm going to try and move on to some other stuff, but you obviously went to his painting studio. That must have been like amazing. You've told me that everything is so fastidiously categorized, which I think Trevor would have had a huge role in.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is catalogued properly. You know, people have given them collections where he's bought whole collections of stuff.
Of tattoo artists.
Of tattoo artists, families, and things like that. It's the collection is so huge, it would take forever to go through and look at it all, but it's kept in the perfect climate. Ed got some money from, I think, the Hardy thing, and he just made sure he set up a museum, basically quality style storage. And I think at that stage, Trevor was in charge of taking off like sticky tape off things, cleaning off things and stuff like that, which is, you know, a massive job, because you just sort of, you don't want to ruin the integrity of the artwork, but at the same time, a lot of these pieces had stains from, because no one get the nicotine stained, or the funny one is if they're Sailor Jerry sheets, they're covered in sulfur. So that's why they're yellow, is that like the ones in the book, they're all yellow from sulfur. And I've seen Sailor Jerry originals that have been professionally cleaned, like you have, at the exhibition we did for Sailor Jerry. And those 20 sheets they've got are just amazing, like how beautiful the colors are. Samantha, who did all that work at the Paper Museum in Philadelphia, I think she is, or no, she's in Virginia, I think. She did all the work on the artwork to take all that off and make it all clean again. But those pieces now live in the Paper Museum, I think, in Virginia, and they will last another 150 years. But she said the sulfur is the main thing they had to take off all the Sailor Jerry pieces, and a lot of guys in Hawaii, and a lot of other stuff's nicotine stained. So Trevor was in charge of that at Ed's shop, and I think they've still got people doing it, but it's such a slow process. Yeah, man, that was mind blowing. And just Ed, just like he can paint so quickly. Like those pieces you see, those massive sort of sheets of panther heads, they'll take you 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If you turn his artwork over, if you ever bought an original in the last few years, he writes how long it took to paint it. So he'll like put in there, you know, the 16th of June, 20 minutes, or he'll like, or you'll write the time he started and the time he finished.
Just like raw energy.
And it is. And that muscle memory thing of just, you've done so much of each thing, you can just do it. You know, he's really good at that. I mean, of course he is. He's been tattooed. He was tattooed so long and drawing for so long.
Phenomenal stuff. I'll just quickly touch on the Sailor Jerry stuff. Like what I found interesting when we did that exhibition as well, and it was explained to me, because, you know, I've got a good collection, as you do as well, of like older Aussie stuff. And I used to always think like cigarette stains, price tags on it, all this sort of stuff was the way it should be. But for archival quality stuff or museum stuff, you need to strip it all back.
To
preserve it.
If you want it to last, I mean, there's people who got, you know, Sailor Jerry sheets and things like that across the world. They're just like, I'm never going to do that. It's part of it. It's like, well, it isn't, but it is. Or it is. But it is. It's eventually going to fall to pieces on you. You know, I've got a burnt green piece of tracing paper, and it was stored really badly for years, and it's just basically from two pieces of regular cardboard being jammed in between that. It's falling apart. It's burning. So the acid burning through those cardboards into the tracing paper, and it's eventually going to be nothing. You know.
Just perish away.
The preservation of stuff is a big thing. If you can get it now and try and preserve it as it is, that's cool if you can, because it'll still have staining of the stickers and stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't want to look at it in 10 years and it's just dust. You know, it's
falling apart. Like we've both been fortunate enough to do quite a few events with Sailor Jerry and all that sort of stuff. But you've also done a lot of work with Crowbar. I think you painted Crowbar quite a few times. And other projects.
I came down there and did some sign writing for Crowbar. I put on art shows up here for a while. There was a gallery that my amazing friends Tyler and Trad, who have, you know, they've got Crowbar Sydney nowadays. It's gone from up here, which is an amazing place. They've always been about music and about art. and they're tattooed. These people are part of our scene, so they kind of wanted to have something in Brisbane that's just dedicated. So I took over just curating stuff there. So I was just putting art shows on whenever I could, and trying to get the Brisbane scene, everybody to hang out together, which they do. Everybody gets on with each other. We just got to find an excuse to hang out with each other. So putting art shows on meant everybody got to hang out. Everybody was doing stuff together, and getting at least somewhere that people were seeing we're still doing stuff. But it's great. I mean, because I think, at the moment, Clint Steele's doing stuff like that. He's putting on gallery shows and stuff because we lost the gallery. So I'm part of doing stuff with him now, or for him. But it's just keeping things going. It really is really cool to bring people in that might be going to see a band but don't know about tattooing in Brisbane. And then all of a sudden they know about all this tattooing. We've had people walk in and buy artwork that just like, oh, I didn't know this existed. So
wow.
It's good. I think it's just a good thing to get everybody together and do stuff, and just sort of look at each other's stuff and hang out, get ideas off each other. It's funny. I didn't know 18 years ago that tattooing would be like this.
Mate, 100%, 100%. Like, we're fortunate enough to have seen it. Clint's just give you the thumbs up. Thanks, mate.
Of course. Thank you, Clint.
And it's good. It's just going to continue to evolve. So who knows where it's going to go. But like, I love what you said earlier at the beginning. Like, true love is like, an institution, and you're tattooing kids that went to the school over the road. Like, tell us a little bit about your style, Luke. Like, I know you do a lot of trad stuff and Japanese work.
I do a lot of trad stuff. I mean, I think in the last year, it's really swinging towards the Japanese stuff, which I've got Japanese tattoos. I do Japanese tattoos now. And I think that I'm slowly getting more into that. And it's more people getting back jobs and getting sleeves. And I think since like the lockdown last year, I have a lot of client base that travel. They go overseas. They go traveling. I have a lot of clients that go see bands. They go out. They're not doing that. So I got people come back and, oh, well, I'm not going to Europe now, so how about you just do that back job on me? Or, they're the things that they talked about down the line. So everything kind of ramped up really quickly for me in the last year, which is good. I don't get to do as much trad, even though I love trad, but I still get to do it every now and then. I don't probably post as much because there's a lot of big stuff I'm doing. I'm working on so many people, and finally got to that stage where I'm doing bodysuits on people. There's like 4 or 5 of them. And you know what happens from that? It just makes another one and makes another one. Just keeps
rolling. And that's the thing, I think, to be like a super busy trad tattooer, like you've got to do a lot of tattoos in a week and over the month, where when you start doing the bigger stuff, it's sort of, you maybe need 20, 30 people and you're done for a couple of months. Because they're all booked in on the rolling system.
I'm finding that, and I'm finding the drawing and stuff, it's like I'm moving away from doing so much painting. So I'm spending so much time drawing concepts for whole sleeves or whole backs and doing color studies. So you lose that time on doing your painting stuff. And so I'm finding it harder and harder to get my own time to paint, which I don't mind at the same time, because I'm getting at least I'm concentrating on the tattooing side of putting those sort of bigger things together and composition. And Japanese stuff is that you know what it's like. It's endless. The amount of stuff you need to learn about it, and you want to learn about it. It's a wormhole on YouTube and on reading websites about it. And for me, I don't have a Japanese master. I wish I did, and just could help me out with all that stuff. But it's self-learning about it, and it's kind of like at the same time, I'm trying to learn everything I can. And I think eventually,
it's
I'm
never ending.
You should just keep learning about it.
A couple of years ago, Cole and I that I've worked with, we were at a convention in Taiwan, and another artist like looking through our portfolios, and he just went, "Oh, you guys have got so much homework." I went, "Yeah, mate, it is a lot, but with that is the joy, the joy of those little things of learning, and you see your work change over time, and all that sort of stuff." So we can talk pretty freely these days about technical stuff. Like, are you using coils? Are you using rotaries? Like, what's your flavor?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I had a chat a couple of years ago with Ricky Luda. So Davo was working in Western Australia with Ricky Luda back in the day, and the early 90s and stuff at WA Inc. And Davo had always said, "You've got to meet Rick. You've got to meet Rick. You've got to meet Rick." And eventually I met Rick at the first Rites of Passage. And we just chatting, and I've talked to him ever since, and he was always been on to me about how he uses a rheostat and coils only, and that's how we used to all do it. This is how it's meant to be done. And so a couple of years ago, he made me a rheostat. and I've gone back
Wow.
to coils, and it's amazing. It really is. There is people are like, nah, it's just the same nowadays. There is some power supplies that are the same, but I found it's all about that power supply and coils, well-tuned machine. You know what it sounds like,
Yep.
and just tattle it with something that's. I use a car battery that gets charged.
I
Every
was just
couple of
about
days,
to
so-
say that, because when you run a
Yeah.
rheostat, that is, I was going to say that's a car battery.
Yeah,
And just explain
yeah.
to people, what's the difference between a car battery and, say, a plug in the wall?
Well, the plug in the wall is going to go up and down. The power's going to fluctuate. It's AC/DC. Whereas this DC is just direct current. It's giving you what it is.
Yep.
It's smooth. There's nothing, no AC getting into the power.
Yep.
People are like, oh, there's nothing in it. But I think I swear, like, put my machines on that thing after being on my critical power supply, and after about 5 minutes, you hear it just change into this different tune. It just totally sounds different. It hits different. It's it's everything about it just seems smooth. I was using a lot of coils. I was using a lot of rotaries. I was using a lot of shag machines, and they're great. But I found that I can use that for bigger stuff. But I think when it's just like an 11 mag and it's this nice smooth coil machine. Most of my machines are made by Morgan. Like Morgan and I have been friends forever. So I get some pretty good machines from him that I've had from him for years. I've never sold a tattoo machine. I own every single one. I have a place for them. I will never sell one. I've sold them away before and bought them back. Just because
Amazing.
So I've got all 40-something machines I still have.
Wow.
But I'll move machines in and out of service and get them fixed, or I'll fix them and stuff like that. But most of the time I'm using like the same 4 machines that are just coil machines that are all nicely tuned, and it's great. I mean, I'm not using numbers anymore to tune a machine. I'm using sound, and I'm using how it's hitting. It's changed how I look at the way I do it. Yeah.
So Benji's just said, finally caught one. G'day, fellas. And Benno, Switchfoot Switches has just asked, when's the next Tiger Snakes tour?
When we're allowed to go to Japan again.
True.
Tour with our band. That's pretty much all we do is tour Japan. So we did it once a couple of years ago. A bunch of friends got together, made a band, had some contacts in Japan, and we did our first shows in Japan. So we toured Japan.
Amazing. Well, mate, Luke, we're sort of coming to the end of our time, but I've got another thing. Like, I know you and Maddie quite well. Behind every great man is a great woman, and you and Maddie have been like rock solid forever. She's a creative in her own right, and I think you're just such an amazing complementary couple.
As Mary Joy said, the Wagners. It's the circus family. She's a circus performer, and she's a librarian at the day job. She's a circus performer, and she is a big big inspiration and a muse of mine. Teaches me a lot about art history. She knows so much about, which has been great. She supported me through all of this, like from the start. We've been together 21 years. We've been married 15. And ups and downs, but now we're in Brisbane. It's our home. She gets to create. She found circus a few years ago now. She's performing. She produces shows. Everybody who knows her knows she's amazing and hilarious, and just a whole bunch of fun to be around.
100%. But the knowledge base as well. Like you said, so many things art-wise is phenomenal. And mate, we could talk so much about so many different things. Like, we haven't even touched on Australian tattoo history or other things like that. So maybe we have to do another one in a couple of weeks, if that's okay.
And interview you. We have to interview you as well. I've got a few stories
you can roast me.
Hear about you.
All right, you can give me a good roasting then. But what we'll do, we'll finish up here. Judge just commented and talk to a little bit more about Judd. He said, ride through the skull, Moldog.
So that's an old expression. If you can see behind me here, there's actually ride through the skull up on this painting here. So it's an expression. It's like you ride through the skull. Just ride through it. Don't ride around it. Like, right through it. And if you remember the old piece of Flash, the skull that was pulled apart, life is certain, death is certain, life is not. It's all about that. And it went from something Judd had with a customer to just kept on developing into ride through the skull, Luke. Ride through the skull, Judd. Hey man, remember to ride through the skull. It's all about just doing it, and just ride through that thing, not around it. So it's an old expression we've had for quite a few years now.
mate. I saw Judd posted the other day on, I think it was his stories or one of his posts, like a massive painting that you did for his studio.
Yeah, that was a funny painting I did years ago. It's called the SS What the Fuck, and it's like a bulldog with lobster claws and a sailboat out of its head, and it's got a fish body, and it's got all these creatures around it, and it's just a nautical style painting I did, and it literally was just a whole bunch of were drawing and painting. I used to have a lot of people come around to my house and paint and draw, like tattooers up here, and we'd all get together and just do Saturday nights in my house, and that was one of them. When Judd saw it, he was just like, I want this. I want this hanging in my studio. And I was like, okay, well, you owe me one. And he gave me a painting of, like, painted me something. Actually, of course, it's a skeleton riding a motorcycle. I think it's only in flames. It's not going through a skull. But it was just this, I don't know, a time where I think I was maybe a little bit freer about everything. It's just like, do anything, just do whatever. And I think I've moved away from that. I've always wanted to go back towards that weird style thing. I think it was guys like friends of mine were tattooed by like Jeff Brazier and stuff back in the 90s, and I saw that stuff, and it just I really loved it because it was just kooky, and things like Robert Crumb and stuff like that. So it all comes from that sort of era, I think, of things. And it was just one night of just going, I'm just going to get this lobster claws, and I'm going to make it a bulldog again, and it's going to have a ship, and it was just stupid ideas, whatever I could put on paper. And Judd just loved it. He's like obsessed with it. Like, it has to, and I'm stoked that like so many years later, it's still hanging in their studio. It's been through a few studios, and it still hangs there. It's a giant,
like pride and place.
Yeah, man. It's like over A1 size. It's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm so stoked because those guys showed me a lot and helped me out a lot over, like, even though they won't admit it, they helped me out so much. And it's just, it's such great having friends like that in tattooing, man. Like, yeah,
it's a very, very blessed thing to be involved in tattooing.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think we're very lucky with what we've got. I think it's great you're doing this and talking to some of us around this area. Because no one knows who I am, really. A few people know who I am, but I've been around.
Yes and no, but that's the beauty of doing. Like, my aim of this is obviously, priority's probably Sydney tattooers while we're in lockdown, but because I've got so many friends, I've got different people, then it'll all, just have a really good mix of. I'm looking forward to getting some like younger tattooers that have only been tattooing a couple of years, so they can educate us as well. And, older tattooers, like, I want to get Max and Tony on. Dwayne. Yeah. Dwayne's nowhere near that old, but Dwayne's only like a couple of years older than me and you, really. But
exactly.
He's been in it since, I think 15.
But like, he's one of those guys you saw his stuff in magazines, you're like, wow, that guy's amazing, like always, it's and still is. He's one of my favorite people. I don't get to see him enough, and I want to go up there. And I've always want to go up there and hang out with him. So and a lot of friends have worked for him over the years, and the stories he tells are just the best. I can just listen to them all day long. They're just some of the best. Right,
mate, I'm going to hit him up tomorrow. So, well, all right, look, I'm going to wrap it up, mate. But let's try and I'll talk to you after this, obviously. But let's try and lock something in for maybe 2 or 3 weeks time, because it looks like fuck all's going to be happening in Sydney for a while. So, might as well just keep this ball rolling.
Yeah, so, we feel for you guys up here, man. We talk about it every day, and it sucks, and it's just a hard place. I think what everybody has to realize, it's one country. It's not state by state. We're all in this together. We're all friends, and it sucks that like our premier's just telling everybody, maybe you should come home, and it's like,
mate, she was so smug on the news tonight. It was. Anyway, mate, enough of politics. I love you. Thanks so much for this, mate, and I'll chat to you soon, and we'll get you one in a couple of weeks, and then you can grill me.
I would like to grill you a lot. That'd be great.
All right, buddy. Thanks again.
See ya.